Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first year of 2021. Yes, there's been a lot of the daily shiurim, but interesting, some of the feedback came that, Rabbi, it's nice, those 5-10 minute shiurim, but we're looking for something more inspirational. The other daily shiurim are much more content-based, going through the Chumash, going through the Tanya, going through the daily mitzvah, and going through davening or whatever. There's so many different topics we're going through, but there's room to go through at a slower and maybe more personable space. And that's really what these shiurim are. We have one on Monday, we have one on Tuesday, we have one on Wednesday. And it's interesting how often one builds on the other. One idea germinates another idea and things just evolve. But as I mentioned a moment ago, taking a break from having to come up with creative shiurim for a few weeks is a gift, simply in the fact that it allows my mind to think about something new. It's not like in a constant rat race, what do I have to say today, what do I have to say today? So hopefully we come with a fresh perspective. And I think it's so important to be able to come to a fresh perspective because 2021 is not starting off very fresh. And you start 2021, and in a way, it's like total deja vu. Lockdown again, no clarity, kids studying at home. Hopefully, they're going to school next week. There's a vaccine, but we don't know when it's arriving. And there's still rumors that the South African variant might not be fully effective with the vaccine. The vaccine won't be fully effective with the variant. There's just a lot of unknowns. Well, at least the American election is mostly over, so that unknown is hopefully settled. But there's like this deep sense that I've been feeling by myself, and I've reached out to colleagues and community members of like Groundhog Day, as we said, like total deja vu. You're actually kidding me. COVID is still here. Lockdown is still here. We still don't know, what the solution is. And there's this sense, unlike every other year that I remember, that January comes with a freshness. Yes, life is, we know the challenges of life are still there. But usually when I come back to shul in January and talk to people, there's a feeling of we're getting ready, we're setting up, it's going to be a powerful year. 2020 is going to be the year, 2019 is going to be the year. 2021 is no one's like talking like that. Like the meme was after 4 days of 2021, someone posted, okay, 2021, I'm done with you. Can we move on to 2022 to see what you have to offer? There is a deep sense of tiredness before we've even begun. And that's unusual because the truth is last year didn't start this way. Last year, in January, we were just finding out about this virus. Nobody saw it as a pandemic yet. It was very, very early in the game. It hadn't hit South Africa yet. And none of us had a clue how it's going to affect. We saw China starting to lock down people. We thought that's a bit, dictatorial, but we didn't imagine it to take place in our reality, in our world. And for so long, we didn't know what we're walking into. So 2020 almost started off more fresh. 2021 has started with like this heaviness. And I just got back from New York a week ago. I got back Tuesday morning and I was there for a little while, and I'm sure you know about what happened in Washington during that time, the insurrection, early January. And you just talk to people there. And honestly, I've been back to America, I don't know, 10 times since I've come. I go back once a year about. I've never felt what I felt now, like this deep sense of stress and tension and tiredness and frustration and people screaming at each other. Like I've always heard it, but now I saw it. I actually saw with my own eyes. You just talk to people, even my own relatives. I'm talking to them like, and that we're just arguing about facts. Like, was the election rigged or not? I'm like, 1 second, I thought that there's an objective. No facts. This opinion, that opinion. And I came back from New York, came back to South Africa, and yes, where I was, there's very little lockdown in New York right now, pretty much herd immunity. But that tiredness. I came back here and it's the same. It's just you come back and everyone's like, okay, so what are we going to do this year? Okay, what routines are we going to change? Um, Very much the same questions that we had last year, but like perpetual. And I want to refer back to something I did discuss last year, and that is the difference between a once-off tragedy and a long-term tragedy. Oh, they showed in studies people who went through abuse that in a way it's easier to recover from a once-off harsh abuse than multiple small abuses because over a long time it builds in. Many of us in our lives have been through traumas before COVID: sickness, death, financial struggle, divorce. But there aren't that many issues that are long term. Sometimes sickness is, sometimes an issue with a child can be a long term problem, but most of the big struggles in our life are heavy, intense, painful moments, but that's what they are, moments. COVID is us living through a reality for 12 months straight. 9/11 was one day, and so many of the other major events of our life, the traumas and the good stuff, were one day that we had to recover from. But the trauma was being a once-off trauma that we then had to unpack. These days, it's constant. We're just reliving. You wake up and it's again the same story, the same news cycle, the same story. So what I've been asking myself since I got back is, so what's the inspiration in this? We're done with those nice words that say it's time to appreciate what we have. We finally learned that you don't need big simchas. Well, I don't know if we learned that because the moment COVID started subsiding a few months ago, everything started going back to normal. Oh, we finally learned our lessons. We finally got our priorities straight. Okay, we did, we didn't. It lasted. There was a time, I would say March, April, May, June, there was a deep inspiration that was felt palpable. Pesach time, it was intense. I don't feel it anymore. I can only talk for myself, but I'm also, in that way, I'm intuitive, like trying to pick up from people what they're feeling. And there is no intense, feeling of, wow, we're going to tap in, God's testing us, and this is an energy, it's a transformative. This has become life already, and it's become a very annoying life. So what inspiration is found within a scenario that is just going on and on and on? Again, we believe Mashiach is coming. And we believe that good days are coming. But one thing we've learned after so many months in this is, besides hope that things will solve itself quickly, we also have to live with a reality that this is here for a long time. It's a long time. Even Israel, they've tested with vaccines, some with positive results, some not perfect results. As I said, the South African variant has issues till the vaccine arrives over here. It's a long-term problem. So now what? It's now no longer an event in your life. It's now literally a part of your life. It's like an era, it's an epoch of your life. COVID is not, I lived through 9/11, I lived through the 2008 crash, I lived through Mandela being elected. This is almost like a long-term problem. Obviously, can't compare the two pains, but like apartheid was a long-term problem for those people who suffered. Other people were just oblivious. But this like long, endless struggle. And in this is the goal, to find inspiration, to find meaning. And it's something we can't fight. Apartheid, if you had an ideal and you believed in something, there was something you could do, there's something you could fight. Over here, ultimately, other than davening, most of us are not inventing a vaccine. So the question is, and I'm sorry for belaboring the question, but it's not just a question, it's life itself. It's the question of our time. And that is like, okay, like I got it. Whatever messages God was trying to send to me, I think I got. There's nothing new under the sun. My mental health is getting weaker. My marriage is struggling. I'm saying that's what people are saying. Like it's the anomaly of it, the freshness of it is over, the cuteness of it, the lessons of it. It's like, okay, we're done. We got it. We saw it. We've watched this movie so many times that even though we've maybe thought this movie was quite original, there's a limit how many times you can watch the same movie. And then, and only then, in this scenario that we're in, is when a different level of faith is needed. You see, often when we speak about faith, when I've spoken about faith in the past, it's been this idea of, I know you've been through a tragedy, but something good's going to come out of it. God, everything that God does is for the good. After a fire, you become wealthy. Don't worry, it's a temporary problem. You'll come out of it. You'll find happiness. But then there's faith of a different kind, and that is you're in the situation, and it's not moving, and you still believe. And I want to go to a thing, even though this is not a Parsha Shir, but the Parsha that we're speaking, that we're learning this week is really, really apropos of this idea. The Jewish people were in Egypt for 200 plus years. 100 years of that, they were deeply enslaved and went through terrible, terrible tsaros. And you see throughout the Torah, the Parsha of last week and the week before, this deep struggle. On the one hand, they believe. On the other hand, when it gets tougher, they struggle to believe, then they believe again. They're living this endless story. They know that one day a person's supposed to come and say, God remembered us. That was the message they got from Joseph hundreds of years ago. Someone's going to show up and take you out of the land, and it's going to bring you to a land of milk and honey. Something great is going to happen. They knew that. They've heard that, but it's just never coming. And yet they believe. So when Moshe shows up, they believe. But then things get worse after he shows up. So then some of them are doubting their faith. And then he takes them out, and they believe. Those who choose to leave. 4 out of 5 people didn't even choose to leave Egypt. They decided they prefer to die in Egypt. They don't want to go. Then even the 1/5 that does leave, we read in this week's Parsha, they believe, and then they're struggling to believe by the splitting of the sea. I'm not sure. Then they're complaining about the water. This, friends, this is where faith is real. In long-term tests, this is when faith is real, because the cliches about, and cliches aren't wrong, but they're cliches in the fact that they're too easy, sorry to say, but they're hard to hide behind. The cliches that it will be okay, everything's for the good. Sorry. Those cliches are hard to hold on to. It's like when someone talks to me and I'm like, okay, it will be good. The words ring hollow. Even though it's true, it rings hollow. Because now the struggle is to find God in a situation that doesn't have a quick fix. To find God in the messiness of life. The truth is, it's not only COVID, life has always been messy. But we were able to float over the messiness or think it's just our issue, whatever. Some of us were able to avoid the real challenge of faith. I don't know why this is coming to mind, and I'm not sure why I'm even sharing it. When I went to New York, it was the first time I went to my father's grave since he passed away. I was there when they put up the stone a week after he passed, but I hadn't been back. The first year you don't go, and I was in New York the first year, but during the first year you don't go, and I hadn't been there since. So I went to the grave for the first time. It was a very intense experience. And the first time I went there was the day I arrived in New York, and it was just an absolute like meltdown experience. And the last time I went was the last day I was there. And this was after a little while being in New York and grappling with all the pain. And I just stood at my dad's grave and I told him, I said, Dad, I need to move on. I have to let you go. And I said it like 10 times. I have to let you go. I have to let you go. Not that you're not going to mean something to me. I said that. But I can't carry the pain anymore. I can't carry the heaviness. It's too much. It's too much to bear. And again, I'm not sure why I'm sharing this. I haven't told this to anybody. But for me, that was like the first time after dealing with a long-term problem for 2 years and tremendous grief and pain. At the first time, I just felt like I can't anymore. Not I can't because the pain's too much, but I need to move. I need to no longer define myself by a traumatic event that happened and its ramifications. I have to define myself by much more than that. And for me, like that episode has really helped me shape my attitude that I'm coming in to COVID. And that is, it's a long-term problem, but I can't be defined by it. COVID is a long-term problem, but it's not everything of life. We have to stop defining life, 2020 and 2021, by one event that's going on. Yes, it's a major event. No one's belittling it. Nobody, like we're not in denial. There's nothing to be in denial about. It's right there in front of our face. We all see it. We all know it. But it can't define us anymore. You can't live like that. You can't just be. A year cannot be just about COVID and messy elections and corruption. Our story has to be more multifaceted, much more than that. One of the great books that everyone's read is Man's Search for Meaning. And one of the things he writes there is his ability in the concentration camp to imagine, to lose himself in the world of imagination. And then in that reality to live almost a parallel universe. I think we have to bring back imagination. Not in like a fantasy way, but imagination of being able to imagine ourselves not only in the scenario we're in, but much more. To be able to define ourselves and see our life as much richer than a wedding that's not taking place, a financial situation, inability to visit parents, inability to travel, whatever, the whole package of COVID, we're done, we've heard it. To be able to see ourselves, you know that song, A Million Dreams. A million dreams to take us away. Just the ability to see and envision ourselves outside of this. For me, that's what faith is starting to mean more and more. Yes, believing that everything will be okay and Hashem will watch over us, but not allowing myself to become this, to imagine freedom, like the Jews in Egypt who were able to imagine that they had a promise from Joseph of more, of a better time. And ask yourself one simple question. What does your fantasy look like? Your imagination. Is it what 2019 looked like? Or is it something entirely different? Because here's the amazing thing about fantasy. Not only does it allow, again, I'm sorry for using the word fantasy, but not only does it allow you to escape where you are and see the world through different eyes, it allows us one day when we're out of this mess to create for ourselves a life that we till now had in our imagination. In other words, try to imagine a world outside of this. What does it look like? Okay, you're hanging out with your friends, you're drinking coffee, you're doing all that stuff, but anything beyond? What does your imagination take you? Where are you allowing yourself to see? and then go there in the future and in the present. Allow yourself to be more than this narrative. Like, we just finished 2020, the amount of memes that came out about 2020, about the, wisecracks. If 2020 was a pizza, it was this. If 2020 is toilet paper, it's that. Like, every joke in the book, 2020 is just like gotten a bad rap, and it's been a tough year. Okay, no one's in denial. But that's what 2020 was. That's what it was. That's the whole picture. COVID, lockdown, financial stress, inability to travel. Is that what it was? What other narratives took place in that year? You can't define yourself by a single story. The human being is so much more than a single story. We're complex. We're rich. We have so much going on within ourselves. Why are we defining this time of our lives by one virus that's taken over the world? As Jews, historically, we've been forced to have an imagination. Think about, our ancestors, think about my grandparents, the Holocaust, communism. They had to be able to step out of the scenario and envision that the world is different. And see the world not only for the limitations it is, but for the blessings there are. I think it's time to let COVID go. It's still here. It's still something we're going to grapple with. It's still painful to see people alone in the hospital, the deaths, the hospitalizations, the long-term. We know it all. But COVID, I've really given you a lot of attention for a very, very long time. But it's time to let you go. I can't carry you, and you can't carry me. I don't want my life, my beautiful life at this stage, to be defined by this. In this past year, we had a baby. This past year, family got close. In the past year, we had beautiful things going on in the community, and we have more Torah than we've ever had before. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You are not my definition of life. Often when a person has a disability, I've said this before, but it's important to repeat, they become defined by the disability. That person, oh, that's a paraplegic. That person, oh, they're bipolar. That person, they're terribly overweight, whatever. And that becomes their definition. And every time you see them through that prism, and they see themselves through that prism. So when I'll say like a certain name, of a person that has a disability, and I don't want to name anybody, what will come to mind first is that person's disabled. If I name the person of somebody who's a midget, the first thing that will come to mind is, oh, that guy, oh, she, they're a midget. Because often what's different and crazy, not crazy in a bad way, but crazy as in unusual, is what sticks out. Even Einstein, for the other side, you think of Einstein, you think of brains. Well, there was a lot more to Einstein. A lot of interesting, complex, he was a real character. But what's exceptional is what stands out. And everything else gets lost and buried by that big rock of exceptionalism. But we can't live like that. We can't live that only the extraordinary is focused and everything else is just absorbed by this awesome big thing in our lives. So for example, you might have a certain issue in your life. One of your children's not giving you nafas. Your marriage is in tatters. Financials is far from great. But is that you? Is that your definition? Are you the person who's struggling with a child? Are you the person who's going through a divorce? Are you the person who has a sickness? Is that you? Because that would be very sad if it was. It's something you're going through, but that's you. You're so much more than that. You're so much richer. Don't define yourself by one event, albeit it's big. Don't define yourself by it. COVID is big, but we cannot allow ourselves to be defined by its messiness, by its interruption to our lives. Maybe what inspired me is like, going to New York, and over there it was a bit too crazy, like COVID doesn't exist. And then flying through Qatar and going through that airport as if COVID doesn't exist, even though they're taking COVID seriously, but in the airport, like the South African airport, everything's shut down. The New York airport, mostly things are shut down. You go to Qatar, it's like a full-on mall going on. And it may be just like for a moment, even though like I don't respect the nonchalantness people are taking towards COVID, it just allowed me to say, okay, fine, there is something else other than this. It's not just COVID. Don't let the big issue overwhelm and make us avoid everything else. There are a lot of other small issues, but there's also a lot of small and big blessings. So that's my first thought for the year. As we start the year and as we embark on a year that, please God, will be full of surprises, please God, full of good surprises, but we don't know. We don't know what the year brings. That's one thing we know. We don't know. But to be able to make sure that whatever does come our way, we won't define ourselves by anything. And we'll keep our faith that God is watching us, that God's with us in the darkness, in the challenge. Why he's doing it, I don't know. We're not his lawyer, and we're not here to understand, but he's here. And to believe that better days are coming, but even before those better days, these days are not that bad either. Everybody, and thank you so much.